We are live. I've been so looking forward to this. Welcome, Dr. Philippa Kaye, to our Bowel Cancer UK Facebook Live this Easter Monday. And what a lovely bank holiday it's been. So we're just a few days into 2021's Bowel Cancer Awareness Month. And you may remember that we caught up with Philippa a few weeks ago to talk about her book, Doctors Get Cancer Too. And she really kindly agreed to come back again during Bowel Cancer Awareness Month. And this month, we've been asking people affected by the disease how they're feeling right now, how their lives have changed after a particularly difficult year. And obviously everyone's different, but we've heard from people who've described it as a roller coaster. They've talked about loneliness, about being overwhelmed, which could be good or bad, as well as many other things. So we thought it was a really nice time just to pause and reflect. And this evening, we're going to be focusing on mental health and the well-being side of a bowel cancer diagnosis. So please, as ever, if you have any questions for Philippa, please pop them in the chat box. We'll get to as many of them as we can. And just remember, though, that Dr. Philippa can't give specialist healthcare advice for individual medical questions. And if you have any concerns like that, you should talk to your GP. But Philippa, welcome. Now, you were diagnosed with bowel cancer at just 39 years old, and you also have a young family. What was that like? You know, how did that feel? What were your emotions when you were told and you thought about the impact on your family?
Primarily guilt. I think that all parents have a healthy tablespoon or ladle full of guilt quite a lot of the time, especially when we work as well. And suddenly I had a whole soup tureen full. That was my primary emotion, is that I felt guilty and I felt responsible that I had brought this trauma into their lives. And it took me a long time and a lot of therapy to understand that I didn't do it, that my cancer did it, and that me and my cancer are not the same thing. They're not two beings within one body, and that it wasn't my fault, and that I was as traumatized as they were. But for a long time, my primary emotion was guilt, and in a way that added to my own burden, and it was something that I felt very heavily. Because it's one thing to deal with pain for yourself, and it's a total other thing to feel that you inflict it upon other people. And actually that struggle was something that I battled with, not just with my children. I battled with it with regards to my partner, with regards to my parents, with regards to my friends, and that I felt sad that they were sad, because I knew that they were sad because I was sad, or fed up because I was fed up. And again, I think it's really important to learn to recognize that they're allowed to be sad, and that's okay. It's just the same as you are allowed to be sad, and that's okay. And that it isn't your fault, because I think that lots of us really feel that it is.
And you've got an awful lot going on in your life at that time anyway, with your treatment and going through that journey with bowel cancer, and to have all of that, trying to think about the impact on your emotions and those of the people that you love and are close to you, must feel overwhelming, actually. I mean,
yes, and I think that sometimes it was easier to put them first, and as a parent, I think that that's often what we do. And it was easier to slide into, let's put food in the freezer, let's, you know, make sure that, I don't know, the rota to scouts is sorted out, or whatever it is, than to deal with the emotions that come with it. So I can often go very practical, and sometimes I found that very helpful. But actually what my kids really taught me was about the value of honesty. And I've spoken about this before, how I was always very honest with my kids. And they would come up with stuff that was entirely outrageous. But that was what they were feeling at the time, and that's okay. And I remember my son, on the day I came home from hospital the first time after my first long stay, and he climbed into bed next to me and he said, "Mummy, I think I've understood now that I'll be okay if you die, because you've been away for 10 days and I was all right, and Daddy was all right, and Grandma was there. And so I think I'm going to be all right." And he wasn't trying to hurt me at all. He was trying to reassure himself that he was going to be okay, but needed to tell me that. And obviously when he left, I sort of sobbed hysterical tears. But actually that was him being honest, and him saying what he felt at that moment in time. And just as me being honest with them gave them to be permission to be honest with me, I think that it really worked both ways.
Yeah, that must have been, wow, hearing that, you know, on the one hand, he's telling you, your little boy, he's going to be okay. And on the other hand, you know, that's just such a tough thing to hear, isn't it? I mean, you touched on therapy there, and I think so many people find that really, really helpful. I mean, what are the things that helped you, you know, look after your mental well-being as you went through such physical challenge?
So I think that we have this idea that defense mechanisms are all unhealthy. And that's not actually true. Some defense mechanisms are coping mechanisms for a period of time, because time really helps. So it was okay for me to go very practical and for me to get sort of bogged down in the details, because at that time I could not actually zone into my feelings, because that would have tipped me over the edge. And whilst it's not okay to block that out forever, in the 3 or 4 days or a week it was before I went into hospital the first time, that's what I needed to do, and that was okay. What really helped me were a few things. The first is therapy. And whilst I find it very interesting looking back now that I have always believed in therapy, I had therapy before. And yet I didn't want to have therapy for being a cancer patient, because I didn't want to be a cancer patient. And going to have cancer therapy was just another thing that I had to do related to cancer. And so I sort of didn't want to. But I knew that my kids needed something. And the charity that I went through would do play therapy for the kids. And that was how I allowed myself to access therapy for myself, because I didn't really want it initially. And now I can't do without it. But I think, you know, it's important to be honest and say I didn't, because it was another thing that I had to do. But therapy has been invaluable, of whatever kind that is. And I know for me, that group wouldn't have worked. And I know that because the doctor in me would have taken over too much. And I would have felt the need to help and the need to fix. And I would have sent all of my processing and all of my emotions out to the other people in the group, because that's what I would automatically slip into that role. And so that's why I knew it wouldn't work for me and that I needed individual therapy. But the second thing that absolutely saved my bacon day in, day out was moving my body. And it doesn't matter how you do it. And if you're starting from square minus 100 or from 0 or from whatever you are that day, and moving your body looks different on all of those days, it was something that I could achieve. And it was every day me saying to my body, are you still here? Are we still friends? Are you still on my side? Because it really feels like your body comes to attack you. And that's really difficult to deal with, because I would say, if you ask me, where am I? Where is the essence of Philippa in her body? I would say, well, it's up here in my brain somewhere. And it felt like my belly came to get me. But every day I could say to my body, okay, we're going to get up, we're going to walk, or we're going to work out, or we're going to do whatever we're going to do. And every day it would hurt, but it would say, yes, here I am. And so it was a way of reestablishing that relationship, as much as it was to give me endorphins and energy and everything else. So those were the two things that really helped me. And the final thing is to go and play the end of the world game, which is when you sit in your car and you turn the music up loud and you scream and you scream and you scream. Because actually sometimes you need to let out whatever it is, and sometimes that was screaming, and sometimes that was singing at the top of my voice, and sometimes that ended with laughter, and sometimes it ended with tears. But to allow yourself the release in whatever way that it comes.
Oh, that sounds, I love the idea of the end of the world game. Just getting it all out there. Ruth Stevens has been in touch actually tonight. Hi, Ruth. Thank you for joining us. And Ruth's been reading your book and she says it's really helpful. Ruth's just 5 days post-surgery. So Ruth, I really hope you are beginning to come round and feel that you're on the road. And Ruth's got a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. So that's quite a lot on. So all our love and best wishes to you, Ruth, for a speedy recovery. And Philippa.
Absolutely. And also to say, this is something that I was really aware of when I came home from surgery. First of all, is that your body has to heal first before your mind can even begin to play, because you literally spend all your energy physically and psychologically into healing your body. And it's only when your body is healed that you can begin to remotely even focus your mind. But what I was really aware of when I came home from surgery was how I had gone from being absent and away to being present but not active, and how the kids would play around me as opposed to playing with me.
Right.
But that's okay. And I felt really bad about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing X, Y, or Z. But actually your kids will understand that. Even the 2-year-old will understand that they can snuggle up on the sofa and read a book, but that you can't jump on the trampoline. And essentially they're grateful for whatever it is that you can do. And I just wish that I had been a little bit kinder to myself about all of those things. So I really hope that you allow yourself to be kind to you, Ruth. Good luck.
Oh yes, all the best, Ruth, and let us know how you get on. We've also heard from Liz, who says that is exactly how I feel. So good to hear. I'm not alone with my feelings. Loving your book, Dr. Philippa. So
thank you.
It's really touching people, and just knowing that you're not alone is so important, isn't it, as well? Having that network. We've also had Susie, hello Susie, who's also said wise words, so striking a chord this evening. And it's interesting you're talking about physical, being physical, and your recovery and it being so important. And of course the doctor side will say, well, you must get up and you must move about, and from your book, you're told to move straight away, aren't you? But there are days when you just can't, can you? And and it's giving yourself permission to say that's okay as well. And actually, just kind of going up the stairs is enough exercise for me today.
I think that's something that's really hard to learn, how to tune in and listen without also listening to the voice that says you're tired, as opposed to you're too tired. And often for me that would be, okay, let's give it 5 minutes, and if it still feels rubbish at 5 minutes, we're stopping. And that might actually be a 2.5 minute walk away from my house, because I've got to get back again. So there's no point going 5 minutes, because that's another 5 minutes back home. So you have to listen, and rest is the only way that you will recover. It's the only way that you heal. And even if you were Mr. Olympic gold medal winner, rest and recovery and sleep is hugely important at any stage. So you do have to listen. But it's about doing little and often, and it's about understanding that as long as you're doing your best each day, that's progress. And it is irrelevant if you walked 2 minutes and someone else ran a marathon today. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters was that you tried. But what I've been discovering recently, actually, especially on social media, is how little support there is after your surgery, or after your chemo or your radio, with what you might be left with.
Yes.
Or what might take 6 months or 9 months or 12 months or never to fully recover. And how that means that even after your treatment is done, you have a physical reminder every single day that you were a cancer patient, or you are a cancer patient, or that you are a cancer survivor. And that has its own mental toll.
Yeah, absolutely. It does, doesn't it? I mean, talking about that, well, I've had a message here from Helen. Hello, Helen. And Helen's really talking about, again, the impact of that sort of psychological impact of going through something like a bowel cancer diagnosis. And Helen says, why do I still cry? I saw the cancer counsellor and told her I want the part of my bowel back. It's as if I'm grieving. I was 59 when diagnosed, very fatigued for months, had bleeding investigated. I actually had bleeding today, and will phone the GP tomorrow. So there's an awful lot, isn't there, to try and...
A cancer diagnosis is a trauma. Full stop. It is a trauma. It is a physical and a psychological trauma. And there is a loss. There is so much loss. And all of us have, cancer or not, have had loss in the past year. Loss of freedom, loss of access to our loved ones, loss of work, there's been lots and lots of losses. And when you have cancer, there are more losses. There is loss of the life that you had before you had cancer, because it's never coming back. It might come back differently, but you're not going back. And that's really hard. And actually, I think that we have to grieve that. We have to grieve all of the losses that we have, all of the trauma that we have, all the pain that we had, all the times when it sucked. Yeah. And that sometimes you need to almost marinate in that. You need to feel that in order to be able to heal from it. Mm-hmm. We know that having a cancer diagnosis drops the levels of serotonin in your brain. And when people are depressed or anxious, they have lower levels of serotonin in their brain. And one of the medications that we use is called an SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And it bathes the brain in the serotonin to try and make you feel better, because serotonin is a feel-good hormone. And we know that whether or not you feel depressed or anxious, cancer patients have lower levels of serotonin. So this is not just affecting your body, this is affecting your mind as well. And we need to be better as doctors at treating that, as opposed to simply cutting out that bad bit of bowel and sewing it back together, because it's much, much more than that.
I think that's fascinating, the physical impact on your mental health. And Helen, do go and see your GP tomorrow. I'm so sorry to hear that you're experiencing this. Do take care and let us know how you get on. A couple more messages have come in, actually, Philippa. This is obviously sparking a lot of thought and debate this evening. And Stuart says, hello, Stuart. Says, I was diagnosed stage 3 on the 15th of February. He still hasn't had an update due to some cardiac investigation. And how concerned should he be about the cancer growth? Now, obviously, we can't give individual advice. And Stuart, you do need to get back to your GP about this. But
we can say in general that different cancers will grow at different rates. And obviously, I don't know what the details are for yours. But there has been a big push in the cancer communities to actually wait and not rush surgery, so that you can do something called prehabilitation. And prehabilitation is about getting your body in the best shape that it can be before you have your surgery. Because we know that you're going to be lying in a hospital bed, you're going to lose muscle mass. Muscle mass is really important for lots of reasons, not just function, but also anti-inflammatory, and has an impact long-term health. And so there have been lots of studies saying actually doing 2-3 months of good prehab before you even go in means that you have a better outcome, even though you're living with a cancer at that period of time. And you have to remember that most of us have been living with cancer, we just didn't know it before our diagnoses. And I'm really sorry that you have to have cardiac investigations, but it needs to be safe before you have your surgery. And so whilst it's incredibly difficult to wait, and that period of uncertainty that is, going on so much longer for you, because until it's out, it all feels terribly uncertain. But to be able to just shift the mindset just a tiny bit and say, okay, what can I do in this period of time while I'm waiting? What can I do? Can I stop smoking? Can I improve my diet as much as I can? Can I move my body? I'm not talking about going to couch to 5K in a day. I'm just saying, what can I do a little bit to take control before I go and start my treatment? Because not only will that help you physically, but that will help psychologically too.
That's perfect, actually, because Andrew has got in touch. Hello, Andrew. Thanks for joining us this evening, and said, my surgery is next Monday. Any tips on how to mentally and physically prepare? Well, you've just brilliantly answered that question.
But there's one thing though about psychologically preparing, mentally preparing, and that is that it's very likely that people are not still going to be allowed to have visitors in the hospital. And that is tremendously difficult. I did 10 days in ITU. I did 15 days in the hospital in total in the pandemic on my own. And that was the second surgery that I'd had in the pandemic. The first one I was only in for one night, and I thought that was hard. And I think that there are some things which help. And the first is to control your tech yourself. So make sure that you have your charger and your extra phone chargery battery thing or something, but put it on silent so that you control it. So that when you choose to look at it, that's when you're choosing to make contact. But that when you are trying to doze, or the doctors are there, or whatever else is happening, that it's not beeping, beeping, beeping at you. That you ask your friends and family for what you need. Now, what I needed was to always be able to pick up my phone and to have a message from someone. So I asked everyone, whatever time of the day it is, you wake up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet, send me a message. Because that's really made me feel less alone. And I asked them to write to me. And so if you've got anybody that lives nearby the hospital, get them to write and drop it in, so that you just feel that there is still contact and a connection.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, really good luck for Monday. I hope your surgery goes brilliantly well and those tips help. And, again, let us know how you get on. I've got a message here from Leanne. Good evening, Leanne. Leanne says that my dad was diagnosed just 12 weeks before he died. There aren't necessarily early warning signs, and this makes me angry. I'm still struggling with the reality of not knowing until it's too late. And that's really difficult, isn't it? Because we've talked a lot about knowing the symptoms, knowing the red flag signs to look out for with bowel cancer. But it's not always the case that you're going to get that warning, is there?
No, and I think that that's why we're all terrified of a cancer diagnosis, because we don't know what that means. We don't know what stage that means. And some cancers are more hidden than others. And bowel cancer, we know, is the 4th commonest cancer in the UK, but it's the 2nd commonest killer. And so it can stay hidden. I didn't have the typical symptoms, and that's incredibly difficult. And then when you add the speed, 12 weeks is not a long time. That's not time for you to process what has happened to your dad and your family. And so you need to give yourself that time. And a grief counsellor, colleague of mine, who's also trained as a psychologist, gave me an analogy about grief that I've used ever since I've actually heard it, which is the circle in the box theory, which is that if you imagine a square and your life is the square and your grief is a circle inside it, and at the beginning your grief fills the whole square, and wherever that circle touches the sides you feel pain, and at the beginning that's all the time. And as time passes, the circle doesn't get smaller. When it touches the sides, it hurts just as much. But what happens is that your life gets bigger and the box expands. And so the circle doesn't touch the inside of the box all the time. But that takes time. And 12 weeks is not remotely long enough. And I'm so sorry for your loss and for your family. And it isn't fair. And that's why we push so hard for screening, because screening really does have the potential to pick up things before you have symptoms, so that more and more people will not be in the position that your dad was.
Absolutely. Oh, Leanne, so sorry for your loss. And, it is so tough, and not everybody will get that red flag symptom that gets them into surgery, to save their life. Mandy has also been in touch, and her husband's been having treatment for bowel cancer, and it's now metastatic since 2017, so has been living with it for some time now. And Mandy says you never get away from the fact that it's there and probably always will be there. And I guess, for your mental well-being, carrying that with you, and whether it's your bowel cancer or your loved ones for many years, must be a
So
challenge?
I think that that's a huge challenge, and I think that the impact on a partner, we talked about children, is really big. And because the partner isn't the person with the cancer, the focus is all about the person with the cancer. But actually, the parent or the spouse or the partner is going through their own trauma and also needs to look after themselves or have their own outlet that isn't you, and their own access to therapy or group or whatever coping mechanism that they need, because they're also undergoing this process. And I think that all cancer patients and their loved ones are aware of this spectre that's behind them, and how to learn to live between scans, how to learn to live between treatment is a real challenge. And I think that the general population have had just a smidge of an insight into it during the pandemic, because there's no one's planning a holiday 6 months time. There, no one's even planning a party in 4 weeks time. No one's planning anything. They're living in the now, and that's the skill of managing to cope with cancer, is it to be able to focus on the joy of now, as opposed to always be worrying about the future. And I'm not saying that that is easy, because it really isn't.
It isn't, but I love that, the joy of now, and that sort of, we hear a lot about mindfulness, don't we? But it's in essence being able to say, look at that, listen to that bird, look at that sun on my face. Take care, Mandy. All the very best, and to you and your husband. And I hope the joy of now will be of some comfort to you both in your journey. A lovely message from Stephen. Thank you for joining us, Stephen. He says, I've just finished your book. I wish I'd been able to read it 5 years ago when I was diagnosed.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for that. And Barbara, hello, Barbara. Barbara says, thank you. I'm so happy to hear this positive advice about prehabilitation, because that can really help. And that's something fairly new, I think, that, people haven't been talking about that so much before. I do apologize. I think my cat has decided to join us, but we've got another thank you from Helen, whose question you talked about a short time ago, and just said that she said, thank you so much for explaining about how the brain copes with it, and I certainly have been grieving. So lots of this is resonating with people. Debbie's joined us and says, I'm supporting my mum. I'm hoping to get through as many of these as we can, because lovely comments and very important questions. Said, I'm supporting my mum, who's on a second round of chemo following bowel surgery in October 2019 and liver resection in September 2020. Tumours are now back on her liver, and the lack of support generally following these procedures have really surprised me. I want to do more. So it's like, what can we do as people with a loved one with cancer in our lives? What can we do to try to make sure they get the support and the care that we desperately want for them?
So the first thing is, I have lots of ideas about what we need to do as doctors, and as patients and as family of patients, we need to be making noise about what we need. For example, something as simple as the diet sheet that you didn't get, or you did get, about going home from hospital, because most of my followers, when I talk about diet, didn't even get one. So we need to be making noise about what we practically need. From the point of view of supporting somebody who is still going through this, I think that there are lots of things that we can do, but there is no one right way, because everybody needs different things. And even within the same person, be it your mum, who obviously you know very well, what she will need will vary from day to day.
Yeah.
So some days she might need to moan, and on other days she wants to forget and talk about EastEnders. And my simple advice is that whatever actually she wants that day is fine, and to be guided by that. And so if that means having a giggle, I mean, I remember I walked around the shops with my mum the day before I did my bowel prep, because I knew that I needed to buy loose baggy clothing, and I went into, I think it was New Look or something, and all these t-shirts had slogans, and they were slogans like living my best life, and I was like, I need to add with cancer, thank you next, for my cancer. Sorry, I'm late. I didn't want to come. And I was like, I just need to write because you're about to cut my bowel open. And so we walked around this shop in hysterics. And I think anybody else listening to us would have gone, why are they laughing? She's clearly very sick. But that was my way of coping at that precise moment in time. And so whatever it is, that's okay. But your mum is still your mum. And what I imagine more than anything is that to allow her to still be that person. So to allow her to look after you sometimes, to allow her to still, I don't know, go out for a coffee or whatever it is that she enjoyed before, will just remind her that she is still that person. And that, I think, is really helpful.
Oh, absolutely. Well, actually, in a similar vein, I've had a comment here from Jane. Thanks for joining us, Jane. Jane's 5 years post-diagnosis, diagnosed only 49, and treatments and surgery, in common with lots of people, you've touched on this, Philippa, have left her with lots of health issues that have been seriously impacting quality of life and mental health. And it's just trying to, Jane's talking about the lack of cohesion between hospital departments, foot surgery postponed because of low blood count caused by an antibiotic prescribed by someone else, and just having some way, or a GP or somebody who could bring all of this together and coordinate, because what Jane talks about is the support during cancer was first class, but since, it feels like you're very much on your own to navigate. And how do we do that? How do we try and pull those things together better?
That's my job. That's literally my job as a GP. It's one of the things that I do, which is that I know that you are seeing the oncologist and the rheumatologist and the cardiologist and the something, and I need to be reminding all of those people that you're not just a heart or a liver or an elbow, that you are a person with all of those things. So I would definitely be asking your GP to make sure that they're holding all the strings. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
And the second thing is to still access the cancer support, because you are still somebody that's been touched by cancer. And so you don't need to walk away from that. And I think that there's this feeling of that once you're cancer free, or you've been cancer free for a period of time, that you shouldn't be, that you shouldn't take from somebody that might just be going through their diagnosis or their treatment. But actually, you still need that support, because there are long-lasting impacts. And I think that is something as the medical profession that we need to be much better at handling. And I think that we need to be putting more resources into the support of the follow-up, because it is essential. And I would say wherever you can get it from, be that from Bowel Cancer UK, be that from Maggie's, be that from your GP, be that from whoever else, that you still need that, and that's okay.
I think that's really good advice. I do hope that helps, Jane. Do go back to your GP. Don't be afraid to ask for help on this, because there's a lot to navigate. Gary is watching from his hospital bed. Surgery 11 days ago, thoroughly endorses all that's being said. It's been a stressful 6 months since diagnosis, but watching you, Philippa, on morning TV. So hi, Gary. Best wishes from both of us for speedy recovery. Do take care, and I hope you're back on your feet and feeling better really soon. Stephen says that guilt's a long-term issue as well, that chemo takes something out of you forever, and 5 years. He still feels guilty for being too tired. Hi, Stephen. I'm sure that's something that will resonate with a lot of people. That long-term impact that perhaps.
And so the research is just being starting to be carried out about what we call the long-term complications of survivorship. And much of that research is actually being done in breast cancer at the moment. It's the commonest form of cancer, and there is a lot of funding that way. And what's being found out is that it's not as simple as, because we gave you drug X, Y is happening. But there are long-term issues with regards to things like fatigue and mood that don't necessarily seem explainable by a drug or a surgery. And we need to do an awful lot more research into all the cancers and the impact of survivorship and the long-term potential health problems that come with survivorship. And we need to do that research, because only when we know what the hell's going on do we stand more of a chance of finding an answer as to what to do with it. But in the meantime, what we need to do is that we need to help you find a way of coping with what you've got. And that might be, so we know that exercise and pacing works really well with fatigue, but it might be that also we need to have some kind of talking therapy to help with the mental aspects of that too.
It's so important, isn't it, that people aren't just going to survive, but you're able to thrive following your treatment for anything like that. I mean, I'm going to rattle because we've got a couple more comments in here. And firstly, huge thank you to Alex. Alex Wagstaff got in touch to say, I'm fundraising for Bowel Cancer UK. Thank you, Alex. Alex has a partner who's going through treatment and has also lost a dear friend recently. And Alex says, I'll do anything and everything I can to support. Thank you so much for that. That means the world. We are hugely grateful. And I do hope your partner's treatment goes really, really well. Heather has also got in touch. Good evening, Heather. Heather's a year post-diagnosis, surgery and 6 months of chemo, had routine bloods, and unfortunately the cancer's metastasized to her liver. Should find out on Thursday what the plans are for surgery. So everything crossed for you for Thursday, Heather, that you get good news. But Heather says, I've learned to live day by day since day one and count everyone as a blessing. I'm rarely sad or angry. I've never thought, why me? As frankly, it could have been one of my children. I would gladly be the one taking one for the team right now. I
mean, that's amazing of you. But for everybody out there who thinks that I don't feel like that, that's okay too. That's okay. And I also didn't think, why me? Because I sort of thought, well, why not me? Because it can be anybody and everybody. And that's the sort of great leveler of cancer, isn't it? That it can affect us all. But I think that there is something about the waiting and the daring to hope or not daring to hope. And in my last PET scan, I lay in the scanner and I bargained, and I honestly don't even know who I was bargaining with, but I sort of said to myself, it's too much to hope that there's going to be no cancer. So I'm going to hope for something that could be a keyhole surgery as opposed to another big laparotomy. Yeah. I'm going to hope for something which is going to be maybe just a little bit in my liver or a node, as opposed to having to have a huge resection and more chemotherapy or something like that, because it was too much to hope for the idea that it could be negative. And I think that lots of us sort of have this odd sensation because in some way we're waiting. Yeah. And that is a burden, and that is a burden. And for everybody else around you, they might feel that it's done because your surgery is finished, your radio is finished, whatever else is finished. But for you, it's not done. And every time you get in a scanner, every single time, it feels like the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. We are sadly running out of time. We have got a couple of minutes left, and so I'm not going to, unfortunately, I'm not going to get through all the comments that we've had this evening. Just a final note to say, you know, do go and have a look at Bowel Cancer UK's website. If this has thrown up more questions for you, there's a lot of information on there. There's the support service, or Ask the Nurse service. You can get in touch with them if you've got any particular questions. There's the online forum, which is a really friendly, welcoming place where lots of people with bowel cancer are talking about what they're experiencing. And thank you to everyone for joining us this Bowel Cancer Awareness Month. It's been absolutely brilliant to chat to you, Philippa, again. And it's been really, really wonderful. I think we've got through some really rich topics of discussion here. I'd love to do it again. You know, we've still got so much to talk about. So maybe we can find some time, you know, another time to do this again. It's clearly resonating with an awful lot of people this evening.
Sure, you know where to find me. I'm more than happy. I think the wonderful thing, and there are wonderful things about having cancer, is that it's a community and we understand each other in a way that other people perhaps don't. So I'm more than happy to help, because feeling part of something and not feeling alone is often enough to give you the strength to keep going.
Yeah, I really think that. I've just seen one more comment from Elaine, who's just been diagnosed, has a PET scan tomorrow, surgery the day after, and is feeling so scared right now, and understandably. Elaine, we have everything crossed that everything goes really well for you. I hope that you feel a little less alone after this evening, and we're always here on the forum if you want to. You know, it's a great place. If you wake up at 2 in the morning, you can go on the forum and hopefully feel a little less alone. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming this evening, this Easter bank holiday. I do hope it hasn't snowed on you wherever you are. It's been very cold here, but none of the white stuff so far. And we'll see you again soon. Thank you again. Lovely to see everyone. Thank you, Philippa. Bye.